November 2nd, 2006 meeting of the Athens Shade Tree Commission, and we have three members of the Citizens Commission here, and our City Council representative, and our OU liaison, and our urban forester. So we're able to work. We have the minutes of the October meeting to look at. I believe everybody got an email earlier today, and if you did your homework, you'll be able to speed read this.
They were very good minutes.
They were very good minutes.
Yep.
Well done.
Ron is to be
Thanks,
commended.
Ron.
So,
That Halloween too, we can do that.
yes. So this was probably more fun than Halloween, wasn't it? Does anybody have any corrections to the minutes, or additions or amendments? Okay, somebody will move to accept the minutes as they're.
I move we accept the minutes.
Second.
The minutes are moved and seconded to be approved. All in favor? Aye, all
Aye.
three of us. Okay, Candy, pardon me, Debbie will put those in our file. We have some lurking minutes from September that will be showing up in your email boxes with any luck at all, and perhaps we can just do those by email and then have her put those in the file. They were long, and good. Our first item is a tree permit activity that is really has been taken care of by code enforcement. Strictly speaking, this is a query from a resident of Door Lane, Pat Funk, who had some difficulty with shrubs that were in the right-of-way, which he had planted with permission in the right-of-way, and provide some screening for their house on Door Lane from Columbus Road, which is straight out and parallel across a vacant lot, which if you're using old landmarks in Athens was the old Golden Inn motel, which burned down and is now a lot that's probably going to be developed. But the property owner of the empty lot had been clearing shrubbery around his side and was also clearing into her side, and she wanted that to stop and has managed to do that, and code enforcement and the city have provided her the support to make sure that those shrubs are safe. Steve, you want to say something about that? She has a dozen blue spruce seedlings there too, which are not
what happened was I received a call from the resident in Door Lane, and she mentioned that how you and her had some discussion and recommended her to call the code enforcement office. I then immediately contacted you with email about what the commission had reviewed when the adjacent property owner was doing the clearing had applied to remove some trees in the right-of-way out by Columbus Road. And you got the information back to me that you didn't want any cutting at all along Door Lane, shrubs, trees, anything. It was all to be left the way that it was. And I was able then to immediately, again via email, contact the owner. And I told the resident at 10 Door that if any more cutting occurred, to call me right away, and I'd go out to the site. But evidently nothing's happened. So that was all taken care of really just in one day.
Yes, and it seems to, thank you very much for having protected those things in the first place. And this seems to be doing the trick. It just seems the property owner next door needs reminding every once in a while, or the people he hires don't necessarily know precisely where they're cutting.
And just kind of an overall view, the reason I bring it up too is anytime that you see anything you think is suspicious or maybe not have been permitted, or should not have been permitted, whatever the case may be, contact my office right away. Or has to do with trees, I think Ms. McMillan is welcome to those kinds of questions too, and then she can get the information right away back to me and I can take some kind of corrective action, even enforcement action, if necessary. Just get the word out. Don't hesitate to call in and even ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Okay, that's an interesting street to go down if you have an opportunity. It was the old Columbus Road. It was the old highway at one time. So quiet little lane. we have a landscape ordinance issue, item number 3, and this is the University Estates condominiums called High Point Village. Several of us looked at this in committee, and we have some concerns about the site. Let's see. I think I'll call upon the 2 commissioners who helped with this, David Ingram and David Sinkoff. But
Okay, well, we reviewed the plans, and there are a number of things that we're rather concerned about. In presenting a preliminary plan, there's supposed to be some documentation of the pre-existing trees, all trees over 6 foot diameter at breast height in areas proposed to be disturbed should be recorded and be part of a plan somewhere. And that doesn't appear on here. It should also be clear, as it is required later, as I'll note, that parcels of land reserved for public use or reserved by covenant for residents of the subdivision, they need to be clearly marked on these plans as well. These are 210309, C, 7 and 12. You'll see why we need to know these things as we get into this. Moving on to in the subdivision regulations to 210705, the landscape plan, which shows trees, I'll just put that one there, 30 feet apart on the roadway coming in, but then they are much further apart once we get to where the houses are. This is not sufficient for to fulfill the requirements of the landscape plan, of the landscape ordinance, which require trees to be planted every 30 feet. Now, we do have some leeway to allow consolidation of plantings. So if you're not able to plant all the trees that will be required at 30-foot intervals, then there is a possibility that we could allow you to plant them elsewhere, and that's why we need to know where the public open spaces are, because they're probably the ones that we'd ask you to put some of these trees adjacent to, or maybe even on. We feel, in fact, that you can plant a lot more trees along here. We think that the large concrete strip, which I think is 70 feet wide, could tolerate a tree right in the middle of it, and then a tree at each of its edges. That would bring the number of trees almost up to the minimum required of 1 tree every 30 feet. So we're sort of losing 1 tree per house at that point. Some other requirements of 210706. You're supposed to protect existing plantings. Maximum effort should be made to save fine or exceptional plant specimens. This again can be used through the landscape ordinance to allow for consolidation. If there are large areas of woodland that have been preserved, they can be used as part of the landscaping for the planned unit development. Topsoil preservation. Some of us have visited the site when it's not clear that topsoil has been preserved. Maybe it has, but we didn't see where it was. Let's see. Going on to the 210905 minimum project area requirements. 20% of the land of any PUD shall be reserved for common open space. That's the possible space where the additional trees could be placed under some sort of consolidation arrangement. I think that's it. I think that covers it. Okay.
there were also, for the trees around the condos,
yes.
there's 1 tree per unit. So there are 4 trees around.
And those trees were not what we consider to be shade trees. They were fairly small.
Yeah, crabapple and
Serviceberry, Amelanchier, which are somewhat small for considered as a shade tree.
and you do have a flat area behind some of the buildings, like building 1 and 3, but then there's a steep drop off, and so the larger shade tree might really help you prevent runoff and erosion on that hillside behind it.
And in the steep areas, it would be worth planting perhaps smaller caliper trees so that they would stay in place.
Well, and evergreens can be really effective in those kind of sites too as well. Spruce and pine.
Yeah, behind building 3, there's a very steep slope going up that's barren. There's nothing on it, and that might be an area they would need to tend to. But the slopes going down behind the first 2 buildings are already have a young sycamore forest basically growing up there.
Good.
Yeah.
Maybe.
For the street trees along the entry, those every 30-foot trees, we were looking at suggesting a mix of things so that if some sort of pest comes in the way that we're having experience of the emerald ash borer, you would have a mix, you wouldn't have invested everything in one species.
Certainly, a mix of several types of oak would be useful there.
Zelkovas and lindens, I think,
Yes.
were other suggestions.
London plane tree is another one that does well in those kind of barren places. Doesn't get too big.
We're having some trouble with canker stain on that. I don't know whether it's a big problem, but we've lost half a dozen trees in the last 2 years.
Right, scratch that.
Yeah.
Something's going on with
Straight
those locally.
sycamore. They're beautiful Marietta. They really are.
So, do you have any questions for us?
I did bring. Those were photos of another development, but I did bring you some photos that were taken today. And I'm not exactly sure, and also you wanted to see a.
Yep.
That was that is not the development,
No,
it is the
this
type of building.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here, see, front elevations, this is what we paid, so that was good.
This is building 1.
oh, we did some like
Well, it's
70.
indicative of all the buildings.
If you want to come around this corner,
Sure.
Yeah, it might be easier.
Yeah, what we thought for the single tree would be to try and line it up with this position here.
Next to the building
Well,
or
close,
further out?
fairly close to the road.
The sidewalk?
They do
To
seem
the
like they're really
sidewalk,
gonna be
yeah.
wide parking area.
But along this line, so.
That one is no longer
But you can
relevant.
see here, there
It's,
are
we're
1,
not
2,
using
3
those
doubles,
planters.
and I think
They
that.
have a second one.
Yeah.
Garage is right there. On all the buildings.
Okay.
Now,
Why
on
does it have to
the
be continuous asphalt?
first building, if
That's
you're going
orange.
up the road to the left,
Sorry.
the driveway, that will be in the back.
Yeah, that's what I was looking
And
at.
the others are, the next 2 are in the front.
All the rest of them.
All
In the
of
front.
All the rest of them will be in the front. They'll
So this would be
identical
what
to
the
that
front looks like, for the rest of this is what the first one on the left looks like from the back.
From the back.
Yeah.
The
That's
back
correct.
side.
Is there any reason to have a continuous driveway across these at all? I mean,
It's,
I mean, it looks as if these, certainly that break is fairly large, that one too, but this one may be a bit small.
yeah, Mark asked the same question, and I have the same question. I think it's an invitation to some really strange parking out there. And it really is a problem for getting a cooled surface too. That's 70 feet by what of concrete in front of every house. That's a heat sink. And that's one of the reasons that we have this requirement of having trees along sidewalks and pavement is to cool areas. And this is really going to be a hot spot up on top of a ridge with a lot of drainage issues too. It's going down a really steep street.
But this would be the perfect placement right in there.
I think so,
Of a
yeah.
tree
And
right
then
in
you
the
see,
middle.
you get one at this side and one at that side. You're close to meeting these.
What you're requesting is a actually a planting strip right out to the sidewalk.
I think
Yes.
so, yeah.
And here is the
Yeah, so it
one
would
that you gave us.
be in there, so.
Well, not quite in the middle, but almost.
Yeah, it will be, it will have to be
Staggered,
offset slightly, yeah.
Yeah. Could we draw on that? Or somebody want to make a,
I would say it's probably like this.
yeah.
Okay, with the tree
And then we'd
being
we'd have
located
a
at close
tree,
to.
tree out here somewhere,
Yeah,
and
and,
then tree over on this side, and a tree over on that side. And obviously we'd like to retain those trees as well. And as I say, if you then measure up, you're still short of one tree for each of the houses, according to the 30-foot spacing rule.
Okay, okay. Let me take that back and see what we can do.
Okay.
Draw some plans.
Okay, here you go.
Thank you. And I took your notes, your comments, will you have them written up?
We'll have them in
Yes.
minutes, and
Yeah.
Ron, were you able to get all that, you think?
I can send you an email with a summary of what I read off.
Yeah.
That work? Okay.
I think we got quite a bit of it, actually.
Okay, well, if you then feed it to
I
them.
think I
Oh,
got more
okay.
information than you said, Dave.
Good.
And then I missed the last part, though, the three trees, you were one tree short per.
There's, if you measure the distance for the full width of the property, or how essentially the repeat distance of the properties, we're short of one tree if we use the 30-foot average spacing. And it doesn't seem as if it's going to be possible to fit another one in there. And so then we look to other places on the site where we can have additional trees put in.
Now, there's gonna be sidewalk in front of this too, right?
Yeah, the sidewalk both sides of the street that is 5 feet wide, right?
Mhm.
Is that correct, Mr. Holmes?
So,
I have seen that indicated on some.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is yet to be reviewed completely by the planning commission, so those kinds of details will also come out in the planning commission.
Let's see, we had a bit of specific advice about deer food around the condos. You had a previous landscaper submit something, and I gave that plan back to you. That was the thing that you got too. And a great many of their things were very attractive to deer, but the one that you have done, I think, here by Albany Nursery, the computer printout that we just drew on, the person who's our authority on shrubs and keeping the deer away from that kind of thing, found those selections really quite good. There was one item, and that was, let's see, well, actually, I think the azalea. She thought the azaleas might be attractive, but the type of rhododendron that was chosen was not as attractive to deer, and the other things were really good choices. So you got good advice from Albany Nursery on that.
When is your next meeting?
December 7th, if it's the
Yes.
first Thursday
Yeah.
at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Well, I think we can, Steve, did you have anything else on this? No? Okay. Good. Well, our next item then is the Emerald Ash Borer Management Plan, and really, this is increasingly in the hands of professionals. Plus
We
a
might
lot
know
of-
trees, we don't know computers though, but that's.
Just in terms of general information, Professor Phil Cantino at Ohio University has been funneling volunteers to us, and I think we're up to at least a dozen plus people's spouses have been victimized. And so it may be even a higher number than that.
Do we
Same-
need to contact them?
We do.
Okay, so I can do that too.
Okay, he has told them that the first session that we have 4 Saturdays, starting with Saturday, December 2nd, all of them at the ODNR on East State Street. The address is
360 East State Street.
360 East State Street. And we start at 10.
10 o'clock.
There will be at least, the first time will probably be a 20 to 30 minute orientation that will involve some species, some identification tips for the thing we're focusing on, which are ash, but also there will be some orientation to working with the materials. And Ron Lucas is a little more knowledgeable about, a good deal more knowledgeable about that. We have Ilgard doing this work for us. They are putting together,
GIS stuff.
yes, ortho image grid maps, and those will be issued to volunteers and put together with sheets that will key information. I should let you talk at this point
No,
because I'm
that's-
over my
that's
head.
great.
Is that the keying information you want to have?
Yeah, this is what we decided on, what kind of data we're gonna try to collect, using, of course, the aerial photographs, so you guys can pass that around. And then interestingly, what we learned in our last meeting with Ilgard is that they are interested, at no extra cost, in doing a full street tree inventory, a snapshot of 1 or 2 neighborhoods to really try to get a better idea of, total canopy cover or lack of canopy cover and the age of the forest. And so they asked me to come up with a different grid sheet for that. Albie's seen this, but Ron hasn't seen this one yet. So this was what I've come up so far on that. I think the only thing I'm missing on this one is sidewalks. I forgot to put. We tried to mirror what was done in 1991 with the original street tree inventory. So you guys can feel free to mark on that and add. During the orientation process, we are going to go over those definitions and how to record the information on that. So I thought that was better than trying to put definitions and fit more words on that sheet.
Might it be worthwhile to have these sheets, once we've got it nailed down, printed up in advance and given to the students to have beforehand, so they've seen these things, and that would allow to have some definitions of anything that's
Okay.
truly gnarly. What do you think, Ron?
I think the sheets are great. I just had a comment about the orientation part. I think that it will take longer than 20 to 30 minutes. I would put aside probably an hour to an hour and a half.
For the first one, I
Yeah.
think. So the
There's
December
going to be a lot of
2nd.
questions on the data mediums that we're going to be using and expectations in the data itself. I think we need to allow more time.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Albie and I just made a comment on the utility line thing that we may need to differentiate between the high voltage cables, which are a serious problem because of AEP's pruning, and telephone lines to cable TV and so on, because they are not they're not a problem. I mean, you have to prune around them sometimes, but
Once you figure out how to look at the poles, you can tell the difference.
oh yeah, I mean,
quickly.
Yeah, it's obvious.
I can educate the volunteers very quickly on how to identify those things. The other way would be to get an overlay of the high voltage circuits. I don't know if AEP can give you that, but that will be the other way of
I
doing
think
it.
Ilgard is working on that. That came up in the meeting, but again, we don't want to have too many things on the map
Well,
itself. with
the volunteers wouldn't need to see it.
Oh, okay.
No, it will be information for us.
Yeah.
Because then if we suddenly see a bunch of ash trees and close to high voltage cables, then they are an immediate target for removal if there's any question at all by
Yeah.
AEP, hopefully.
Yeah, they are working on that.
Okay.
I didn't catch if they had actually made contact to get that information from them.
I mean, in the Near East side, I've already got a map of the circuits.
Oh, I wouldn't. Darren may want to just.
I mean, it's easy to do if you just walk around.
Yeah.
But
let's
Darren
give it to
Cohen
him.
might.
Mhm.
That might be easier than him. Us
Reinventing it.
getting.
Yeah, we'll pass that along to Nicole.
So what I'll do tomorrow is email all those people, and I thought I have a really nice, just a one-page fact sheet on how to identify an ash tree. It's got 2 pictures on it. It's a PDF, so I think people could download it, just to kind of get them thinking.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get
Good idea.
us going. I know it's a month, right? The first one's
December
December
2.
2. Yeah, that'll go by quick though. So it's probably good to make sure those dates are on their calendars, I guess.
Yes.
I noticed a difference in are you going to have the same, are these going to be 2 different listings? In other words, they're going to two pieces of paper to identify this? or-
Let me, the volunteers are just gonna have the ash tree inventory. That second one was just for, a special worker that Darren, has hired, and she's gonna do this as part of her work study. She has a lot of experience identifying trees. Her undergrad was in, botany. So she is gonna do the trees in her neighborhood, and they're gonna map it out. And again, it's just gonna be, it's a separate project. You weren't at that meeting, so I'm gonna catch you up. So Darren mostly wanted to, he wants to look at not just trees, but utility lines and sidewalks and other things, because he wants to get an idea of how long that will take and how big a project that is. So this is kind of an experiment.
Okay, I just noticed the fields are different. You have
Yeah.
street address on one, third column down, and one says, species.
Yeah, because we're really collecting different data. Again, the
Okay.
ash tree inventory, we're gonna just look at ash trees, wonder how big they are, can we sell the lumber, if they, are they underneath wires, so AEP will do it? And can we replant, so kind of a lot more basic information, I guess, right now.
Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, you've got at least a dozen volunteers, that's what you're saying?
Yes, plus, that doesn't count
Us.
us.
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, Saturdays.
You're volunteered.
I volunteered, obviously.
Can I ask another question about that, though? Because we're gonna do the whole city, right, with the ash tree?
Ultimately.
Eventually, yes, but I
Yeah.
mean, initially, the idea, I think, was to take a section of the city
Yeah,
and
Ron,
Do the
try
east side
and
of the
figure out
theater.
what it's going to
Okay.
take to do the entire city.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed in doing an inventory with Jackson the weekend, I think it was after our meeting, when I actually looked at all the data that was collected, it was just not very good. The mulberry's this big and that kind of thing. And so I wondered if maybe we should like all be with a group, or maybe one of us take a street and we've got two groups, one group on this side of the street going up and another group, and we can kind of zigzag back and forth just to kind of make sure the
Well,
quality of the data.
That's something, again, you're going to learn as you go along as to how to do that. I mean,
Yeah.
That may be the way to start it out, to make sure everyone's doing the same thing. But once they're all educated, you may be able to let them loose on their own.
Yeah, and maybe they'll like it so much, then they'll do the bigger project later on, We may wanna, if all of us are gonna be there, maybe we should probably meet.
we have to do that
Here's
before.
a thought. The purpose of this ash inventory is to identify the ash trees for removal. We're not gonna have a whole lot of controversy about what is small, what is thriving, and what is dead. So, in those terms, we can get started on the removal process fairly soon. But when we have Ilgard doing this snapshot, we can import all these ash trees into that same data layer that's being created by Ilgard and get consistency in the ash trees that are remaining or replanted.
That's very good.
Mm.
Yeah, very good.
Good idea.
Oh, golly, it's a big project.
So the first time, so you're just saying doing the east side first, and how much of the east side are you
Of course,
talking
Ron has
It's
it
going
mapped.
from the bypass east.
about? Okay. To the far east area, okay.
And just real briefly, for anybody that might be watching this on TV, we're not talking about removing trees at this stage, but, with the emerald ash borer coming, we've gotta have a plan to deal with these trees once they do die, so. We kinda skipped over that part.
Yeah.
Well, we've been discussing it for a long time,
Yeah.
that's why we.
We've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
The idea is,
only.
the idea is that we're going to identify small trees or trees that are not healthy for removal soon. And AEP's trees, we'll see if we can get them to remove them. And then the big healthy trees, we're going to hope we can keep them as long as possible.
That's a good way to approach it.
Kind of triage.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if there's nothing else on the emerald ash borer, or is there? Paul, you're looking very thoughtful.
Something to give the volunteers, I assume, so they identify.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'm not sure what it would be. A splinter or something, I don't know.
Emerald ash borer of the brooches.
Could they be brought off with just maybe hot chocolate and
That'll probably be
cookies, maybe?
possible.
Maybe we get the Village Bakery to do an emerald ash borer cookie.
Oh, that'd be really
As a
cute.
challenge.
Yeah.
Or pizza with it as a topping now.
That's an avalanche special.
Okay.
Well, yes, that's something to think about.
Yeah.
This is giving away 4 Saturdays potentially.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Cold Saturdays, and this is gonna be rain or shine for volunteers, right? We're all in
Right.
agreement on that?
And especially that first one, which might be more indoors than out at that point because of all the orientation. And Cantino has said that to his students. So, yeah. All right.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is something, I hope I have enough of these, that you all have received in your email, and this comes from Steve Pearson as
I've got a
a,
copy.
did you get it? You got yours too?
Oh, I probably have it, but here, give me
Yeah,
that.
it's easier. Anybody out there, Ron, do you need a hard copy of this now? It should be potentially in your email to capture, to try to roll. This comes out of an experience which proved that we need to have some way of describing, detailing, ensuring that we get coherent, usable plans that we can understand in terms of a lot of things at sites, including topography, which turned out to be a real educational experience at one site. Let's see, we have, Steve, perhaps you would like to say something about this since you are the author of the language. We will probably make some modifications, or perhaps not.
This all came out of, basically out of a meeting that was called by the Service Safety Director, Ray Hazlett, and he and I met with Alvy and Nick Carr from the Water and Sewer Department, the director. After the plantings were done at Bennigan's, Mr. Carr, one of the trees that were planted adjacent to State Street, removed because they were planted on top of a sewer line. So the second I take that back, the end of the first section, 3703C, kind of relates to that, and that's how this whole thing started up. Because the fire department and the water and sewer department do have some interest in the relationship or the overlapping of areas where their services or utilities are in common with areas to be landscaped, I think they need to look at that first. If Nick was concerned about trees on top of his utilities, it would have been better if he'd had a heads up, you know, here's where they're proposed to be planted, and then he could have made some comment. And they are identified to be moved on the lot. That was one of the questions I had when Nick requested that they be moved. My understanding is they will be relocated somewhere right in that area, but not over top of his utilities. So fire chief and director of water and sewer they'll be required to look at the plans too. Basically, in that first paragraph, you have to take about 3 or 4 deep breaths to get through that entire sentence, Mr. Hazlett told me. But
It's a
what
very
I
long
tried to
sentence there to begin.
I tried to describe, and that's where I want you to add or modify. I tried to describe every situation that I thought might come up that should be addressed on a plan. So when you're just looking at a sheet of paper, hopefully you can visualize then what the site looks like without having to go there. Some of this also came up too because we had some erosion off the parking lot at Bennigan's. The parking lot's not complete. There's no curbing around the parking area. The interior landscaping hasn't been done yet. The developer was just in a rush to, get the business doors open is what happened. So we've had some associated issues with erosion, clogging storm sewers, and I know Ron's been out there. I gave Ron the contact information for the owner of Bennigan's, and he's been in contact with him. Some sediment fence has been put up, although when I was out there a couple days ago, some of it's fallen over already. So, we have that combination of We need infrastructure in those areas that aren't paved in the right-of-way. It's kind of like the signs we have in town for cars to share the roadway with bicyclists. We have a lot of competing interests in one area, so hopefully something like this will require everyone to look at a plan, so we don't have the situation that came up where all of a sudden the director of water and sewer says, yikes, I don't want those trees over top my new sewer line. So hopefully that'll help to clear that up. Another thing that Nick Card pointed out too, he didn't want any plantings to be done unless the developer or the landscaper had called the Ohio Utilities Protection Service to determine the depth of utilities, their location. You've seen commercials on television for call before you dig where the guy is planting a tree or working on a water line.
Yeah.
So if we add that to the requirements also, that will protect, even the installer, who may not know exactly where those utilities are. Water and sewer can easily do their locates. They know generally how deep their utilities are too. You don't want to cut a fiber optic cable or some kind of buried communication cable. Sometimes that can get a little expensive to repair. So hopefully by adding this language, we can try to consolidate on one or two sheets all those competing interests in that, especially out by a street or by a right-of-way. So that's how that, Bennigan's evolves, I guess, which it probably in the end will be better off because of an unfortunate situation.
This is formalising really a process that certainly used to take place where the tree commission and each of these entities used to see a set of plans downstairs, I think, in what was the old mayor's conference room, when we used to sign off that we'd all seen them. So I think this is a good thing to have it formalised like this, but we've still got to do it.
Right. We have so many proposed development projects going on now that I announced 5 or 6 at the staff meeting Wednesday, and we've reinstituted administratively a review process where we have like a sign-in sheet, and every city department has to identify the day that they were there. Their comments have to be in writing. They have to be coherent enough that if we just, say, transmit an email to a developer, he understands what the concern of the fire chief is or the code enforcement office. So that process internally, administratively, is happening too. So probably I should add a line on my review sheets for tree commission. And it's easy enough. I generally just send out, the contact to everybody that I have these new plans in the office. Please come in and review them. I can just, I can easily put you on the email list, and you'll know that someone needs to come in and look at the plans. They're always at the code enforcement office. The administration's determined that all development plans now will be archived at the code enforcement office.
Good.
So they won't be up here. Everything will be down at my office. And that's kind of consistent with your request, I think, at the last meeting, that I keep all landscape plans with the building plans also. So we don't have a little bit over here and a little over here and a little over here. So I'm not calling you up and asking what was the last thing the tree commission approved. I've got it right there with with the building plans.
Is there any requirement that the erosion control measures be indicated on a plan?
Are you talking about sediment and erosion control?
Right.
It depends on the size of the site. The land development ordinance has some sections in it about the kinds of things that you have to do to protect a site. One thing that's really nice now, the EPA has recently lowered the threshold from 5 acres down to 1 acre for plans that need approval by the state EPA for sediment and erosion control. So that would include sediment fencing, sediment detention ponds. So
anything over an acre, they've reached that threshold and
Right.
they have to have their plans.
Yep, and just about any, now that probably eliminates all the residential sites. It wouldn't, though, for example, eliminate a review like that for High Point Village, let's say. And generally, an acre is a good size where it's about the smallest commercial lot that's feasible to develop. For example, out at the old engineer site, that's 4.5 acres total, and there's 4 businesses there. They all have, around an acre, a little over. And I don't think you couldn't get any more intense development on 4.5 acres than what's going on right there.
210704 of the subdivision regulations has all of the erosion control statements in, I think.
What's the number?
210704, soil erosion requirements, and it references the EPA requirements as well at that point. And that would apply to all PUDs as well as subdivisions, wouldn't it? I think, that particular section.
Yeah. The land development ordinance is another ordinance, Title 27, that, part of the problem that I see with a lot of these ordinances, as they're adopted independently, they have no interconnection to each other. So just the observation you just made about stormwater discharge permits from the EPA, that's, as we go through it, we try to, revisions of these ordinances, we try to tie them together. Makes it hard, though, a lot of times, especially if you use a section number and then it gets modified, and then you got to go look at 5 other places to change that number, but that's just a clerical kind of a thing. All those requirements about sediment and erosion control are contained in Title 27, Land Development Ordinance. And, you know, really just to be honest with you, too, a lot of that is, all the city regulations in their total are very ambitious for a city with no planning department, no planning director, and no city engineer. Hopefully we can move, you know, towards some of those things. They're talked about in the comprehensive plan, and hopefully they'll be able to be realized and, you know, at some time. So basically right now, it's me, it's just one person. And that's why I commented before, I need the public's eyes and ears all the time too. I can't be, you know, a lot of times I'm stuck in the office, just pushing paper. Once I get a call, then I can run right out or send one of my officers out who are normally doing housing inspection work. They're able to go out and do these kinds of things for me, if I know.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
About the EPA? What's their review process? Last time I checked, one person had 23 counties and.
It's very easy, to be honest with you, to get an NPDES permit. That's what it's called. It's basically just a 2-page submittal.
So they don't visit the site?
They generally are only able to visit the site on complaint.
Yeah.
They did, for example, though, they did make a visit 2 weeks ago to University Estates in High Point Village. And I think you're right. I thought it was 27 counties. It's one person covering 20-some counties.
Yeah.
They have the same challenges that we have in the city. You know.
So their review, when you say that the EPA reviews their plan, is the developer required to send up a plan like that to?
Yes, generally what it's going to show is the site, a survey of the site. It's going to show perimeter protection measures. It's basically just that black fence, which, you know, falls over pretty easily, especially if it gets a lot of sediment buildup on it. Outfall areas where water's going to discharge off-site through a catch basin or a culvert, that needs to be protected by straw bales or some kind of additional fencing. And then they generally require a sediment detention pond somewhere on site, so the water that is running off with dirt in suspension, it has a chance to fall out in a pond before it discharges through a filter and goes off-site.
But there's no enforcement of that. They simply just.
Well, I think generally they just go out on complaint.
Steve, in terms of this Ohio Utilities Protection Service, I don't know anything about them. Do you know the process on? I mean, I've never done excavation, so I don't. What do you do? Call them and they get back to you or something? Or?
Yeah, I think they locate within 3 days. Ron might know more about it.
You call a number and they respond within 2 days, and basically they mark in paint: water, sewer, electric, telephone, cable, gas, potable water.
So they know all that stuff
Yeah,
already?
they know. They use various agencies to go out and physically locate that on the ground, so you can see it visually before you dig.
It's out there
When
now
they
for us.
would have Nick do
Here's some
it,
decoding.
right? If say a landscaper calls up the Ohio Utilities Protection Service, then Nick Carr's guys are gonna go mark the sewer, right?
Yes.
So it's the local agency that, you know, the telephone company comes and marks with a telephone.
Okay, they just get coordinated by this group.
Mhm.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know, how they
You
do
probably
it.
already know this one, but Nick Carr will be very pleased that we have these.
Yeah, I think what you might have there is a,
let's see.
kind of like a wallet size,
Color code utility.
right, for the, what each color means, or what each colored flag might mean if you see flags.
Yeah. and here
I
thought it
have
was,
lots of information at my office too that's provided free by the same service, pocket guide to underground utilities. Any, you know, I've been routinely attaching those to my building permits, hoping that, you know, that people will use them, but I have tons of information about it. And it can all fit right in your pocket. Contractor can throw it on the dashboard of the truck. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not volumes. It's something very easy to handle.
Okay, in terms of this plan approval, where does this fit into the process? I mean, this is going to be required mapping that any builder's going to have, right? Or a drawer?
Well, this will be contained in the amending, the sections to be amended that I've listed here are in the landscape ordinance. Let me give you an example. Mr. Holmes, for example, came to me and he said, what kind of landscaping plan do I have to have for High Point Village or for a subdivision? And when you look in the subdivision regs or the, especially the planned unit development regulations, it just says a plan submitted to, reviewed by, and approved by the tree commission with, and as Mr. Ingram pointed out, you have to go to different places to kind of establish a baseline of what kind of information at a minimum you want to see. So,
One question I've got, it says plan drawn to scale. Is there any minimum scale that your office requires?
there's something that could be inserted there, probably, there's some boilerplate language on it.
Okay, because sometimes we're given plans where it's very difficult to actually figure out
They would do it
what we've
anyhow.
got.
Right.
And they may be drawn to scale, but it's too small a scale to really make an adequate judgment.
Yeah, we can say, for example, sheets no smaller than 2 feet by 3 feet, or whatever the inches are. And at a scale no less than, if you can't fit everything on that one sheet, you have to submit multiple sheets. That's, for example, at High Point Village, that's what you're going to have.
Do you want to discuss changes to this now, or do you want us to mark it up and?
Why don't we take them and mark them and bring them back to the next meeting? We can have a meeting in committee specifically on this if we want, because chewing over language is
Yeah.
Presumably we're relying
A good way
on
to
you
get
presenting it
indigestion.
to council.
Yeah, I can put it forward to council, but I'll have to look at it too.
Right, and that
again,
was
try
my
to see how it
intention
looks.
too. And Alvy and I discussed that. Right after the meeting, I tried to just put something together very quickly before, you know, as days go by, sometimes you forget exactly what it is. And this is only intended to start a discussion. And my hope is ultimately that the tree commission will take their recommendation to council to have Title 37 amended. So this is not by any means meant to be, these are the sections I think you need to amend, or the exact language. Hopefully it's close to what you need, and then this will just, you'll have time to tune it up to get it just the way you want it, then take it to council for ordinance amendment.
Going back to the anti-sedimentation issue, do you think there's any need for us to change 37 to include any language like that, or do you think that Title 27 has got? Hang on, I may have
Well, my
misspoken.
proposal is to put this in 37, the
37.
landscape.
Yeah, but refer to erosion control.
Yeah, that could,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
yeah,
So you
someone
think-
could go back through, yeah, you could go to Title 21, find reference numbers, Title 27, find reference numbers. Probably even parking areas, parking lots are in the zoning code, Title 23, to have a cross-reference number. That way you wouldn't have to keep repeating this over and over and over and over. You could just have a section that says parking lots will be installed with spaces 9 feet wide, no less than 100 square feet, 180 square feet in area, and in conformance with 3703C.
Okay.
Well, do we want to have a committee meeting before December 7 on this, or shall we chew on this individually, come back to the December 7 meeting, and
What's the timescale for council to do something like this?
Committee meeting and 3 readings, and then it goes into effect 30 days after. So you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 months.
So us waiting until first week of December to do
Okay.
this is probably not critical.
yes.
I would say let's leave it
Let's-
until the next meeting, unless
Right.
a development comes up that causes us to have one of our.
There are
Special-
five, there are
special.
5 at the office right now.
How big are they, John?
Rolling right along.
This is a year two where council ordinances don't die at the end of the year, they carry over.
Yeah,
Um,
so we can put
off
something
years,
in.
all legislation either has to be passed or it dies, for lack of action, but this is not the year.
No.
So anything that might start this month or next month will carry through to next year.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no hurry to get it
Yeah,
up
there's
and
no
running.
hurry.
Yeah, we can start anytime.
Okay, well, then everybody should do their homework. Curl up with subdivision regs.
It's all on the web.
Yeah, and actually as a PDF, you can search it just the word.
Yes, yes, it's very easy.
Oh, okay.
Law director is to be commended.
Wait, what is it? Can you say that
You
again?
can go to the law director's website and you can find, I think, most now of the, certainly all the ones of interest to us.
Oh,
They're in a
okay.
PDF file which is searchable. So you
Okay.
can find all references to trees or landscape.
Or erosion.
Or erosion or
something like
whatever.
that.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah.
That's admirable.
What I might want to point out, just probably for everybody who might be watching or listening, if you go to ci.athens.oh.us, at the home page on the left-hand side are all the city departments. Third department down is law director. Just click on law director. Then there'll be a banner across the top, and you just want to click on Athens City Code. And then what it'll do is it'll show you a list of all the titles of the code. And then you can search by word, or you can go to a specific title. All you have to do is go down and click on it. It's been updated, my understanding is, to ordinances that were passed, I believe sometime March or April. The law director's office is trying to make the same kind of effort that they're doing at the auditors and the recorders, and that's almost to have real-time information. So there is a disclaimer that you have to click before you can get in to look at it. But it's really just about as up-to-date as you can get.
And one little technical detail, I found I couldn't download them unless I used Internet Explorer.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
I have the same
Okay.
problem, and I have a direct link through Internet Explorer to go to it. I had trouble also getting through the website. So Explorer, Mr. Hunter's always up on the latest and greatest of everything. So if you're not,
Well, Firefox wouldn't do it.
oh, yeah. Explorer will work.
Okay.
Okay.
Techies, take off.
Well, you'd be frustrated, you see. if you
I
didn't
am,
know
I
that.
am. I'm weeping big Macintosh tears.
I think Safari can probably do it, but we should check.
Dearie me. Well, our next item is a brief summary. The Tree City USA application is being rapidly done by our hero, Ron Lucas. And this is the thing that...
Made me blush, shall we?
Well, filling out, actually, that's a pretty coherent form, but it hasn't been really maintained by one person over a long period of time, and so there are some real information gaps there that Ron is solving.
Yeah, I should have it completed if we get the printing information in Ann's hands. Well, I have to get it to the mayor's hands first by next week.
Yeah, and I have a work summary that I'll type up that I've done in the past, which you may feel free to edit. Thank you very much for doing that.
Well,
And it's a, well, and thank you, Ann Bonner, for processing all that. We get a lot of information out of you for it, too. On prunings and removals, we have, everybody got an email, I trust, on prunings and removals. I was computerless for a critical period and was unable to print that out one more time. So I just want to make sure folks know that the prunings that we're talking about having Mr. Schumacher do are 80 South Shannon, a silver maple, 23 Stroud's Run, locust and an elm, 69 Morris, deadwood pruning of a silver maple, 62 Franklin. Sorry, I don't have that described here. And 17.
It says dead pruning limbs of
Mulberry.
mulberry.
Thank you. Yes,
Okay.
that's it. And 17 West Stimson. This was a sharp-eyed bicyclist who must have seen this. It's a dead limb up in a silver maple on the back of a house. That's 17 West Stimson, and it says one goes by on Elliott. There it is, lodged in there.
Yeah.
There are two removals. One At 62 Avon, we gave the owner permission there to remove a dead spruce, so he may actually have done it by now. We told him it would be a while, and it was. And so that may not be ours to do still. 57 Central,
I think that's 50, isn't it? Because 57, it's across from you said across from West Elementary, right?
is it? It was one that you had concerns about, Ron.
On Central?
I'm not sure of the address.
Okay.
I think it's
Oh.
50, I was looking at it. It's got a big, dead part of it, it's kind of coming up,
Right
and
on the
something growing in the
corner
middle.
house.
What?
Corner house.
No, in the
Right.
middle, right across the street from the West Elementary School, I think.
It's a repeatedly topped silver maple.
There's a bunch of them there.
Yes, yes,
The
this one
whole
is,
east side of the street has got some sick trees.
Okay.
Gentleman, Ron, from last week, the last meeting we had, he got the signs from our department, placed yesterday, and he's going to have the removal of that box elder starting tomorrow.
Very good. Thank you. And then the city crew is addressing in part of our Tree City application costs of removals. There's a small dead tree at 85 Elmwood Drive that's right on the curb. And I think that's it.
Church, you said?
8 Church Street, I think the city crew already did this. There were
Oh, okay.
vines and limbs around a security light at the back of a sorority, close to a sidewalk area where there's a lot of traffic. You guys already did that. Thank you.
Hey, I just, real brief, I want to just commend the city for making the commitment to address those maintenance issues. Definitely not sexy, but Alvy and I, we deal with calls from property owners every week, and it's, we want to be responsive. I think it's, I see more and more municipalities moving away from those maintenance issues, and then the minute the city doesn't be responsive to those, people don't like trees anymore, and the trees disappear. And so it's a really important part of our tree program to at least address the big trees and the problem trees, in addition to planting and, helping the developers incorporate trees too. So thank you, councilman. Okay. Because wait till you see the bill for those.
Yes.
Appropriate more money. Okay.
But it's a good
Yes.
way. It's a good way to extend the service life of those trees too.
Yes, that is the last part of it. We will be coming to beg for more money.
Yeah, we didn't bring up that part, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have no money, but we will be calling upon you very shortly. Thank you for the last bit of money for the plantings.
Yeah, okay.
So-
I try to remember what funding line it is, I don't. I'll have to look it up.
There was the 5 replacement trees on Court Street plus the West Union one.
Would it help if we explained how important that is? To council?
No,
or-
I
Okay.
think most of them are aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always a question of just finding where to take the money. Yeah.
Okay.
Where it gets moved from, in other words,
Yeah.
Well, the last item is Arbor Day, which is tomorrow by mayoral proclamation. Arbor Day can be any day of the year that the mayor says, and so so he's exercising his power. We chose not to do Arbor Day on something like Friday, April 29th, the last Friday, which is the classic Arbor Day, because on Saturday, April 30th, there was that huge water polo, Ohio University.
Beautification Day, yeah.
Beautification Day, yeah, and so it would just have been inappropriate for us to try to horn in there. So this is tomorrow, and the public is invited, all members of the Shade Tree Commission and the Urban Forester, if she's not in one of the other 16 counties.
Yeah, that got me, sorry.
That's quite all right.
Yours will be more fun though.
It's true, ours is always fun. We have children at every one of them, and there will be, this is a planting, a celebration of tree planted now at the community center. It will be at the west front corner of the community center. As you come in, you cannot miss it. It is conspicuous. There should be a lot of us hovering about it. The ceremony will be at 4 p.m. There's plenty of parking around the community center. This is a legacy tree that the mayor bought, and it is in memory of Wayne Key, who was the service safety director for over a decade. He chose a dogwood, the mayor did, because that is the state tree of Wayne Key's home state, Virginia. And this is a Coosa constellation dogwood. It will be given some ceremonial watering by children who are in an after-school program at the community center. So we'll have children participating. The mayor will read a proclamation. We'll have a little promotion of legacy trees, perhaps, and an explanation of Arbor Day. And it's brief, but very, very sweet. One of the nicest events in town.
Yes, very good.
So there's other business, and it is not as sweet.
We apparently have some trees that have been removed on the West State Street Park. There
Okay.
are trees in public areas, and we should have been informed that this was going on.
Golly.
I mean, we may
Apparently
well have given
12.
permission and so on and so
How
forth,
many?
but we are supposed to be informed.
12, again, I haven't seen the site, but I was told there was a resident that lives down there that took those.
So this
12
is,
trees.
these are photos from a concerned resident who saw this happening. Ron, do you know anything about what the removals were about?
No.
West State Street Park.
Yeah, I know
Oh.
that the removals happened, I don't have any information about it.
Hmm.
Rumors only.
Yeah. So,
This is land that Kevin would be in charge of,
yeah.
Kevin Schwartz.
Again, I don't know the situation real well to speak to it.
Yeah.
It's possible to find out, I guess, or...
Well, we'll ask for information and to have it by the next meeting to find out what happened. Yeah. Okay, well, thank the resident for coming in with pictures, and yes, we will hope to hear that there are replacement trees going in place of this.
Actually, I got an email from Communities Food Initiative. Did any of you guys get it?
Oh, yeah.
About a planting of pecan trees.
Yeah.
Down in about, somewhere down there too.
Not near this.
Not near this,
Yeah,
by the garden, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're working through Kevin
Okay.
to try to, they're little, I'm gonna work with them.
Okay, so somebody on the tree commission is aware of what's going on. That's why I'm asking.
No,
Before-
we should. I don't know when they're gonna plant them, so it is something,
Yeah,
yeah.
technically, again, they're supposed to tell us.
Well,
this is
that's
going
why I'm
on.
bringing it up.
I don't
They're
think
looking
they
for
got-
volunteers right now, and they haven't picked a date. So the
Have they
email I
gotten
got.
approval yet even though, to even do it?
Well, they haven't asked us, so no, they haven't got approval.
Well, I'll say this, she called me twice, and I called her back, but our cell phone went out, so I think she is trying to go in
Okay.
that direction. So maybe what I should do is,
If you
Give her
can
your-
get a plan, get it to one of us.
So
and then
we're
we
not
have
going
them-
to have some utilities.
them
Yeah.
bring it in.
Give her one of these.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we should touch base, yes, she should.
Well, I don't even think she got approval from Kevin Swartzoff yet. So
Okay.
I think that was, I kind of told her, he manages the park, so that was the first step, I guess.
Well, this looks like part of his management too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm wondering whether this is something that we got information about a long time ago, and
No, it just happened.
it just happened, yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Okay,
interestingly,
we'll ask.
they have installed a lot of new ball diamonds there. As I was telling one of you guys, I spent a lot of time there this summer with my son, and there were some box elders and mulberries that were kind of stretching out, along these new. They were really delightful. Of course, tree hugger, I thought they were nice to have the shade, but that may have been, it seemed a bit extreme to pull the roots out and all, because I would have thought they could have been pruned back, but I don't know, what the story is at all. It could be some sort of infrastructure, underground infrastructure maybe. I
Don't
just.
know. Okay.
All right, a mystery to be solved by December 7th.
Yep.
And the other trees to be planted there, or somewhere on the park area. We need to find that out.
Yeah.
I think she said 3 of them.
Well, they haven't been planted yet.
No,
right?
they haven't. They
Oh,
were
but
looking for
where
vol-
they?
They were looking for volunteers to help dig holes. I guess I should call them.
But I will do, how about, I'll save you, just, since I get paid to be in my office to do this, I will call her.
Okay.
And give her all your emails, because that's a convenient way for us to communicate, correct? And then make sure that she gets, follows the.
Where the location?
Where are these plantings proposed?
So, I thought she said somewhere near the community garden, but I couldn't tell you exactly where.
And who is the resident again?
This is actually Community Food Initiatives, Rhonda.
Yeah,
I forget the
Rhonda,
last name.
Community Food Initiative.
Yeah. I can forward that email to you. They were just looking for volunteers to dig holes, and they hadn't put a date together. This
Kevin
arrived in
needs
the
to
past
know
2
that
days.
too, so. Yeah, so she
Northern
should be,
pecan, something, I forget the name of the trees.
Yeah, Northern Pecan.
Northern Pecan.
so Kevin's email address probably should also be included.
Okay.
But, yeah, we'll thank her, whomever
Yeah,
provided that.
Rhonda.
I forget.
We have one other thing, I guess, well, this is just that Steve had communicated with Alltel. This is confirmation that Alltel has been given written information saying that we had told them to plant a coniferous species around that cyclone fence where the giant flagpole transmission site is, and any equivalent species so long as plantings are minimum height of 6 feet and relatively fast growing. So, thank you for doing that, Steve.
As I read through the minutes, you want everybody to look at the minutes, and I realized I hadn't done it, so that's why the date's today. It's done now.
Good. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's all that counts. I
Yeah.
suspect maybe that was something.
Staff meeting, they put a little asterisk by action items.
Mhm.
I visualize an action item.
Very good. Is there any other business? Okay. Well, then, we will all see each other on Saturday, December 2nd, to those of us who are doing the ash inventory at Ann's place in the conference room.
10 o'clock.
10
A
o'clock.
little bit earlier, maybe.
Mhm,
That's what you were
probably
saying.
so.
I'll be there.
Okay.
And Ann and I and Ron perhaps will get together a little beforehand to do a volunteer coordination thing.
Yeah, we,
Maybe
well,
the-
you can adjourn the meeting, I'll find
I
out.
had a thought about looking for ways to reward the volunteers that get involved. Possibly the first ash replanted, dedicate some kind of plaque with all the volunteers and people that worked on this
Oh,
project.
that's a nice
To
idea.
do the inventory at that tree.
Mm-hmm.
That would be nice, yeah.
Okay.
Could be a
It's an
part of
idea.
the, yeah. We could have that, at the yes, yes. Yeah, there'd be a,
Incentive, yeah.
Maybe that could be our Arbor Day thing for next.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
actually, we have an Arbor Day proposal for next year already.
2008?
November 3rd.
Hey,
Maybe
Arbor Day
Tuesdays.
can be any day the mayor wants, we could have it twice in 1 year.
That's right, we'll have a spring one and a fall one.
Possibilities endless here.
Yeah, thank you for the idea. Okay, if there is no other business, then the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right,
thanks,
thanks.
Robbie. Hey, so